Welcome to SEC Football Live here on the 440 Sports Network. And of course, that SEC podcast. He is Michael Bratton, SEC Mike. You can get to me, Braden Gall, at Braden Gall on Twitter.com, the cesspool and the sewer that is. A lot of stuff to get to today. The Heisman Trophy coming up. We've got our 4 finalists, and there is an SEC player in there. We'll get into that, of course. I just cast my ballot for Coach of the Year. Michael, for the Eddie Robinson Coach of the Year. So that's super, super interesting stuff right there. Liquid Flames, what is up? And welcome to the comments. Jeff already very pissed off. So
who did you vote for?
We'll get to that. We'll get to the awards and other things.
You can't mention it. Yeah, Billy Napier, right?
I can give you who I voted for the coach. I cannot tell you who I voted for the Heisman Trophy. Georgia wasn't screwed. They lost, says Jeff. Why even play games if the outcome doesn't matter? No one besides Bama Homer supports this playoff. All right, we'll discuss how Georgia was screwed, not if they were screwed.
You think Georgia got screwed?
We will discuss. I also went back and I wanted to refocus in on how Alabama did what they did and why it was able to work in the second half. And so we'll discuss a lot of that and how that's going to play moving forward against Michigan in the college football playoff. So we'll get into that. And the portal is already open. It's already wide open and crazy. We've already got, by my count, I think 9 quarterbacks in the SEC have already entered the portal. A few of them have already made their decisions and where they're going to go. We got some big names also from other positions, Walter Nolan, and you got the Humphreys kid from Vanderbilt going to Georgia, and you got a bunch of other players in there, Juice Wells as well. So we got a bunch of bowl games that we'll get to over the course of the next couple of weeks. We'll touch on it today. So I just wanted to by the way, go over to the 440 Sports YouTube page. All you great commenters who know Mike very well and Cousin Shane and all you guys, if you want to head on over and sort of check out myself, Stephen Lassen, a bunch of other content about Southeastern Conference football, please swing over to the 440 Sports YouTube page. Give us a subscribe there. We would really, really appreciate it. And you can, of course, catch this in podcast form, SEC Football Live.
That's where I get all my football news.
Where's that?
440 Sports.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Yes, Travis, Brock Vandergriff has a crystal ball prediction for Kentucky. I don't think that's official yet, but we'll see. Max Johnson, kind of one of the only ones that's truly, truly official. Texas A&M quarterback going to North Carolina. We'll get to that in just a second. We'll get to that. I wanted to start with just, first of all, your apology to Nick Saban personally. I think you probably should apologize to Nick Saban personally.
Right, I picked Alabama to win the SEC championship.
I know you did. I actually did, and I want you to.
I did too. I'll show you the graphic.
Not in the preseason, by the way. Neither of us did that in the preseason. I had Georgia. I just want your reaction to the second half, because I thought one of the things that makes me not bothered by the committee's decision to put Florida State at 5, because it doesn't really matter. Georgia belonged ahead of them, clearly. But I think one of the things that struck me about the second half after rewatching it, sort of watching the tape itself, is that there weren't a lot of fluke plays. Okay,
I almost got the score right too.
You're almost dead on there. Did it hurt a little bit though on the inside to pick Alabama, considering?
No, I've always been a fan of Alabama.
Always believed in them. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things that struck me was, and this goes to the conversation about Georgia getting screwed and Alabama belonging in and all this stuff, and we can get into the complications of the committee, but I wrote down the big plays in the second half. Just here was a huge play. Here was a huge play. There wasn't a lot of bad penalties. There was a couple. Maybe there was one that was a horse collar that could have maybe not been called, but maybe it was. It was basically a 50-50 call. There were no bad egregious penalties. There was only the one turnover, which was a sort of a self-inflicted wound by Georgia. It wasn't bad anything. It wasn't mistake this or screw up there. It was just fucking great football. It was just one team lining up, making big plays, and then the next team lining up and making big plays. And I can go down the list here, and I don't want to rehash the entire game, but your thoughts on the second half and how it played out in terms of the quality of the games, because I don't think there's another team in America that could step into those plays on those drives, drive in and drive out, and make the plays that both of those teams did on Saturday afternoon.
Is there a reason you're starting in the second half, just so we can admit that fourth down catch that wasn't a catch that resulted in a touchdown that decided the ball game? Is that what we're doing here?
No, there's not a reason. I just wanted to get to like the most important plays of the second half. That wasn't intentional.
Oh,
I just
okay, gotcha. Gotcha.
so
Uh,
unlike you, it was an accident, not on purpose.
well, I certainly thought Georgia had to score coming out of the halftime, and they didn't. That was big. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, Brock Bowers and 𝙎𝙀𝘾 injured at the wrong time. That's not, we shouldn't penalize Alabama for that because
Didn't Brock Bowers catch like one of the most important passes of the entire game down to the 1 yard line with like 4 minutes to go?
yeah, but
And the first play of that drive as well. I mean, I'm not saying he's 100%, but
if he was 100%, different ball game. You know what? I mean, Georgia probably would have cruised. That was a big reason why I thought Alabama could win. But I'm trying to think, man. Couldn't stop Alabama. Couldn't stop them on critical situations, and that's a credit to
Tommy Rees,
Jalen Milroe. All the credit goes to Jalen Milroe. He should have been a Heisman finalist, I would think. But I don't know. That's about all I got. I mean, I can't remember, man. I put that game out of my mind.
Well, let me do this. Then I'll try to do this as quickly as possible. Very first drive, Alabama 3rd and 1 stop around midfield. Huge play. Very next possession, Georgia they stop Alabama. The very next possession, Georgia hits the big 51-yard explosive play, the first big explosive play of the entire game. But then Alabama gets the stop. Should have caught the interception, but gets the stop on 3rd and 7, forces the field goal. Georgia comes back and on 3rd and 4 gets a sack for Alabama, takes them out of field goal range. Huge play by Georgia to knock Alabama out of field goal range. Very next possession, they have the reverse fumble where they recover the ball for Alabama. They get the ball back down in territory, but then Georgia makes a stop on 3rd and 9, forces the field goal, keeps it to a 10-point game. Immediately comes back, Alabama 3rd and 13. Amos, who was filling in for McKinstry, made a great play, almost intercepted the ball on 3rd and 13, stopped Georgia dead in its tracks there. Then Georgia comes back and gets a sack on 2nd and 8, takes it back to 3rd and 19. That's when they get the big return on the punt return to put them back into field goal range. Beck, a couple of great throws on the next drive to go down 20-17. They score the touchdown. And then the 2 great drives by Alabama, where the first one is the best drive by the Alabama offensive line the entire game. They run the football well. They protect Milroe. Milroe goes check down. They score. Then Georgia comes right back with Carson Beck and goes bang, 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 bang. 2 4th-down conversions, touchdown to cut the game to 3. And then Jalen Milroe, again, brilliant on a couple of running calls by Tommy Rees that I thought were perfect calls as well. My point is watching that game, that was big boy shit every possession. You Georgia fans, you want to complain about the refs, take that shit somewhere else. I didn't see any problems with what the refs did in the second half. I don't care. But what I watched when I rewatched the game, there's no way Washington could have made those plays for either side of the teams. Florida State without Jordan Travis could not have made those plays in that game on either side of those games. I think Michigan is good enough and pissed off enough that maybe they could have played in that game. And maybe kept it going. Texas, I think we know, can play against Bama, but that's a different Bama. I came away rewatching it going even more that like these were just big time football plays made by clearly 2 of the best 4 teams, in my opinion.
How do you know Washington and Florida State couldn't make those plays?
Well, Florida State can't because their offense sucks without their quarterback. But that's Washington might be able to.
I mean, didn't everybody have
so.
Oregon winning the Pac-12 championship?
Sure, I'm just saying
didn't everybody have Georgia winning the SEC and national championship? I mean, at some point we got to sit here and not decide to play off because we think this and we think that, and this team can't do this and this team can't do that. But there's games that have been played.
Well, so what's your complaint then?
How
you think Georgia?
What you just said right there, Washington can't do what I just saw.
Yeah, I don't think
you
they
just
can.
said Florida State can't do. Well, did you have Washington beating Oregon twice? Because they did it. Did you have Alabama beating Georgia in the SEC championship and eliminating number 1? But that doesn't mean that will it to happen. I mean, I don't think we should do the sport because of this and that. Because I think this and I think that. I think it should be because of what happens on the field.
Okay, well, I think that is. First of all, you think because 100 years ago we geographically aligned our sport into conferences based on geography that somehow automatically makes all the schedules equal? Like, that's not fucking true. That's a terrible take.
Well, I didn't say the schedules. When did I say the schedules are even?
You're saying Washington deserves to be in because of what? A 0 in their loss column, and Georgia has a 1. Like, that's not how the committee works. The committee's not supposed to do that. The committee. This is why Florida State got left out for Alabama.
Georgia had an opportunity on Saturday, and they didn't get it done.
Yeah, so and if Washington had to play Georgia in a championship game, they wouldn't be in the playoff either. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, if Michigan had to play somebody in that game, I don't know if they could have gotten out of it alive. My point is we're penalizing Georgia because of the quality of its opponent, not how good or bad they are as a football team. And that's stupid to me. That's a dumb way to do it.
Then why don't we sit here and say, well, Tennessee would won the Pac-12? Let's put them in the playoff.
Because you can't make that argument. They're not good enough.
Why not? I feel like it's the same thing you're saying. What, Texas A&M? They would have won the Big Ten.
But why?
Let's put them in the playoff.
How can you make that argument?
Because you're just saying if Washington played Georgia's schedule, they wouldn't have made it. That's what you just said.
No. I'm saying the championship game in particular.
Yeah.
What we do is we all of a sudden we put too much value, because this is the way we used to look at the sport 100 years ago, 50 years ago, 20 years ago. Mm-hmm. That if you have a 0, you're automatically better than if you have a 1, and that's just not reality anymore. Why isn't anyone up in arms that Liberty isn't in the playoff? Oh my God, they won their conference championship. They're undefeated. You know how easy it is for our brains to use context and nuance and say, oh well, Liberty's probably not good enough. They didn't play a hard enough schedule. They played New Mexico State. Shout out Hugh Freeze, in the championship game. Like, it's easy for us to do that. If Texas had to play in that game, I don't know if they're in the playoff right now. I don't know. We know they can beat Alabama, but can they beat? I don't know if they can beat Georgia. Maybe, sure. Hey, Texas has a great argument. I think Georgia, Texas, Alabama, and Michigan are the 4 best teams.
This will never happen because of the money involved. But do you think they should do away with conference championship games?
Conference championship. Thank you, Jay, for the kind words, by the way. He says I need to shut my pie hole.
Yeah.
I'm more of a cake guy, but
because without that, I mean, Georgia's in, right? Of course, Alabama probably wouldn't be in. But
what is a conference championship game? It's a fabricated event to make a shit ton of money. That's what Roy Kramer did in 1992. And
but I'm really eyeing the 12-team era. Like it seems to have no value to me in a 12-team era.
I don't necessarily disagree with you, but that's a different argument. 7 teams belonged in the playoff this year. If I'm an Ohio State fan, I feel like, my team was pretty good. My only loss was a 6-point loss on the road to number 1. Pretty good. I'm Texas. I feel like I belong. I'm Florida State. I feel like I belong. All these teams feel like they belong. And I'm not saying that somebody should have been kicked. I'm not saying Washington should have been left out for Georgia. I'm just saying Georgia was clearly one of the 4 best teams. I don't know how you can watch that SEC championship game and think anything else other than those are the two of the 4 best teams in college football.
What about Mizzou? What about Ole Miss?
4 losses means they're not in the conversation. I don't know why this is hard. I don't understand what's difficult about this.
I mean, Bama didn't have to play at Athens. To your point, that would have been a loss.
Okay.
I throw Mizzou in there. Mizzou's
do you think Georgia? Do you think Georgia? Shane has never been on this show. I love Shane. If you want to watch SEC football live on Tuesdays at 1:00 Eastern time, this is our show. I should never be compared to Shane. Shane is greater than. Here's the question, though. Is Georgia one of the 4 best teams in your opinion? Not did they have their chance. They had their playoff game. They had their crack at Bama, and they lost. And this is the system we have, and cry and whine and cry and whine. Are they one of the 4 best teams? Because the committee's job is to put the 4 best teams into the playoff. That's it. That's the only job.
Is it?
That's all it says.
Oh, yeah. I mean, they're definitely one of the top 4.
Okay, so you agree after 15 minutes of arguing with me, you agree with me. They're one of the top 4.
No, because I don't think that's what they do. I don't think that's what their job. They say something different every week, and I don't understand why people lock into it. This has been a damn sham since they started it, Braden. When go back to the first year, I can't remember the exact order, but Baylor and TCU, I think TCU was in the top 4. They won their final game 48-6
against Iowa State,
and then they kicked their ass out and put Ohio State in. So, but that told me, and it's been true the entire time. None of these rankings, they're all horseshit. I don't understand why anybody pays a cent of attention to any of it until the very last one, because they're all meaningless, and they just change their. Why is this team here? Why is that team here? Well, resume. Well, the eye test. Well, this. Why we gotta get the best 4. Like none of it matters. It's just the final one, and they pick and choose whoever the hell they want. And there's nothing you can say that's going to get that Florida State fans are going to hear you and be like, well, he makes a great point. You know what I mean? It's all horseshit.
It sucks that Jordan Travis got hurt, but it's in the bylaws that if you lose a key player, that's part of their analysis. And Florida State averaging less than 4 yards of play without Jordan Travis doesn't belong in the playoffs. Sadly, it's sad. It sucks, man. I feel bad for Florida State fans. I do. I feel bad for Georgia fans.
Couldn't they say Brock Bowers was limited? Can we factor that in? And then he'll be better in a month, and we can throw them into play? Like, why don't we just do that?
So number one, 𝙎𝙀𝘾 𝙁𝙊𝙊𝙀𝘾 says college football is the only sport that does it this way, the only sport that's factually untrue because college basketball has been doing this for 40 years. They use a committee. And yes, there are disagreements, and yes, it's subjective, but they also use shit tons of metrics. They use records, strength of schedule, they use talent, they use everything. And the committee's not a bunch of politicians. Some of them are football coaches. I don't understand the argument about politicians. They've literally almost never made a mistake in 10 years of doing this. Maybe one time, maybe 2 times a team got truly left out that was going to be, that you could argue is one of the best teams in the country. So I don't like, the system needs to change. This year is an example of why the system needs to change, and it's going to change. But if I'm Georgia, how can you tell me that I'm clearly the number 1 team in America for the vast majority of the season? Then I lose by 3 points on the road to a top 4 SEC champion, and tell me that I'm not good enough? That's the reason is I lost by 3 to Alabama, because I think most everybody else would lose by 3 to Alabama in that situation too. I just think if I'm a Georgia fan, I have the most right to be upset, more than Florida State and more than Ohio State. The committee had to find reasons to leave teams out. Breda, where did you get your beer sign above you? It's a New Glarus Brewing Company. I had to get it actually in Wisconsin, I think. The committee had to find reasons, Mike, to leave teams out. And they're like, it's not the other way around, because everybody deserved to go. Their reason for Florida State was Jordan Travis. Their reason for Ohio State was didn't win the division. Their reason for Georgia was didn't beat Alabama in the championship game. And I think that's the weakest of the 3 reasons that they left Georgia out. That's all.
Yeah, they need to put us on the committee, like Jackson says. Come on now, get in there. We'll fix this shit.
Well, you didn't include me though. God damn it.
No, we don't want that.
Well, it's because I actually watched the other teams.
You're too political. Get that garbage out of here.
I'm too political.
You're just
Washington, and here's the problem with Florida State. Here's the other argument with Florida State. You can't also have the worst strength of schedule. You can't have the worst strength of schedule and lose your best player, one of the 5 best players in the country, and still get in over teams that also deserve to get in. Georgia is the team that has the most right to be the most pissed off, but I understand why they left him out. That's all. Somebody was going to be pissed, but like, don't tell me if you put Georgia in there against Washington in a playoff game, you're picking fucking Washington. Get out of here with that.
Okay, he knows what's up.
Reframing the argument to my benefit. I don't have a benefit. What's my benefit here? I don't want Alabama in the playoff. I'm tired of Alabama in the playoff. I'm tired of it. But what's my motivation here? What do I gain?
Yeah,
I don't know what I gain from all of this. I don't know. Michigan has a far weaker schedule than Georgia. I mean, Michigan had a 2-game schedule. They
were cheating the whole time, so they should not be eligible anyway. Put in Georgia.
If you say that FSU got screwed, you're right. If you say that Georgia got screwed, you're right. If you said Ohio State got screwed, you're right. All of those teams probably would have gotten in last year, by the way.
Vanderbilt.
So and by the way, your thing about the committee being wrong or it's all garbage, like you're way off on that. It's 13 people that that study every single bit of data and metrics, and it's the best system we have because we have 133 teams that play 133 different schedules organized by geography 100 years ago. It's not the NFL. It's not a professional sport where you have equality in scheduling. And then the record is actually how you get into the playoff. That's going to happen.
I think you're way off base, my friend.
Okay.
Because I got my buddy Dave Bartu. He knows the formula, and he puts it out a day before they do, and he gets 20 to 25 in the dead exact spot every time because they just have a stupid formula they go off of. And he gets every week he does it. So I don't know. I don't agree with that. I don't think these people sit around and watch 40 teams play football week in and week out. There's not enough time in the day.
Well, that's not what happens at the end of the. Do you know how the actual structure of the committee meeting works?
I have no idea.
We don't need to go into this, but they rank a group of teams, but they've watched all the. I mean, they have Sports Source analytics, they have advanced metrics, they have game film, they have everything they could possibly need to make an informed decision. It doesn't mean they make the right decision every time. They're human beings. But like all we did was yell about the computers. Too many computers, too many fucking computers, the computers. So then we put humans in charge of it. Now we're saying, oh, the human. Like the only way to do it fairly is to have an NFL system where the record is the only thing that matters. But you cannot do that in college football when the schedules are arranged by geography in 1933. You can't.
But not next year, right? Because there's basically 2 conferences.
Well, in the coming years, the reason we're going to have a breakaway and the reason there'll be 40 or 50 teams that are playing in the top division of the sport. We already had NCAA news this week that they're trying to put together a quote subdivision at the top of the sport that is all about financial compensation for athletes, minimum of $30,000 per athlete across the athletic department. It's about It's about $7 to $10 million of an investment per year from each school. But if you can afford that, you can play in the top subdivision. That is the beginning stages of the breakaway. And when the breakaway comes, the schedules will get evened out. And then you can go based on record. But Jackson says geography no longer exists. What was Washington's schedule this year? And what was Georgia's schedule? And what was Florida State's schedule? It was completely dictated by their conference. And the conferences were arranged by geography. And that cannot be a way to establish equity. It just can't be. It's not a way to establish equity. It's not.
Colin's mad at me now. At Mike.
Why are you a different person on this show? It's an interesting question, Colin.
Yeah,
Mike, care to answer the tough ones from the listeners?
I'm pretty sure I'm the same person.
I think you're a little more like irritated with me than you are on the other show.
Oh, I mean, yeah, comparing anybody to Cousin Shane, I'm more irritated with that person for sure.
But you're right, Jackson. The geography starts to disappear next year, and the schedules start to get more even. But it won't really happen until it's like 12 Power 5 opponents, no G5 games.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be only within the top 40 teams, and therefore you can look at all the schedules and say, they're pretty much even. And then you can put those teams into the playoff, and that's the only way it's gonna that's the only way you can go based on record. You cannot go based on record, otherwise Liberty belongs as a 4 or 5 seed. You can't put Liberty ahead of Texas or Alabama. So I don't know why I don't know why it's so easy for us in our brains to be like, Liberty 13-0, not as good as Texas 12-1 or Alabama 12-1, but it's so impossible for us to look at Florida State, who played the worst strength of schedule of all these teams, was not dominant for most of the entire year, and lost its best player, and say, Georgia was better. I don't know why that's so hard to do. Anyway.
What else we got here? This is committee talk. Oh my God.
Well, it's the only time I get to do the SEC show, Mike, and the committee just decided our playoff. Just super impressed with Tommy Rees and Jalen Milroe on those last 2 drives. So quickly. There's 2 lines of thinking with the Michigan matchup for Alabama. I want your quick picks, and then we can kind of move on to some other stuff. I think every now and then in college football, there is a team from another league that sort of just builds and builds and builds with animosity and then breaks through and wins a championship. 2002, Ohio State did it. 2005, Texas did it, although that was more Vince Young than anything else. 2014, Ohio State did it. They were so sick and tired of the Big Ten, Nick Saban, SEC thing, and I was at that game on the floor of that stadium in the Sugar Bowl, and I've never seen a team more talented than that Ohio State team, outside of maybe 01 Miami, and that Ohio State team broke through. So I think the argument for Michigan is 3 years of this shit. We're tired of hearing how we're not good enough. We got the whole scandal, the whole cheating stuff, how you guys are not good enough. And they've basically destroyed everybody they've played the entire season. And that this is the year they figure it out, because Alabama is not a perfect Alabama team, right? That's the argument for Michigan. The other argument is no one can stop Jalen Milroe.
Wait, you just said they basically dominated everybody, but the only game worth of shit they played. Wasn't it Ohio State? And wasn't that a one-score game at home?
Yeah, basically dominated everyone.
Okay, except the one good team they played. They're going to get their brakes beat off, Braden. Come on now.
I got Bama
with this Michigan hype. Bama go into the national championship, and they're going to face Texas because Texas got all kinds of athletes all over the field. And 𝙎𝙀𝘾 versus Saban, I can't wait for that matchup in the Natty in Houston.
I agree. Former head coach in waiting, Steve 𝙎𝙀𝘾. I think what's interesting is Clemson did it too. Clemson got off the bus and got beat by Alabama and lost in the playoff, and then they didn't. And sometimes it happens where the other team.
Colin says, Mike are stupid, question mark. Mizzou and Ole Miss question, elaborate. Don't be stupid.
What voice are you doing?
I'm trying to pretend I'm in Colin's mind now. He was asking me who I was before. Now I'm Colin, but while he was typing that.
What I'm saying is that every now and then, and this is an Alabama team that's slightly flawed, although they didn't play like it on Saturday.
Why is Michigan favored? That's crazy to me.
I mean, listen, I opened up the betting app and I said Alabama plus 2.5 all day, please. I took Bama plus the 2.5 right away.
Right.
So I'm not picking against Bama because I don't think anyone can stop Jalen Milroe's legs. Tommy Rees has learned how to use him and deploy him effectively. I thought the running game was better. The offensive line was better. The secondary was better. Those are questions about Alabama. They got on the edge. They clearly were attacking the edge against Georgia. And if you can do that against Michigan, I think you can win the game. Sometimes there's a team that does this. You know what I mean? Like sometimes, as I mentioned, I pointed them all out. 2002 Ohio State, 2005 Texas, 2014 Ohio State. You know what I mean? Mike Hurst. The last part is all that matters. Mike are stupid, Braden are smart, football good.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense.
I like football. So give me an actual breakdown of the Michigan game. Don't be a jackass. Give me a real piece of analysis.
Well, hell, I don't watch Michigan, but I watched them in the Big Ten, and it was just laughable that that Iowa team. I mean, this is who their opponent is. I mean, every year I watch the Big Ten championship. It's like that. It's Ohio State or Michigan beating the hell out of the other team, and I don't understand how this is the same league. Could you imagine if it was like Georgia versus Vanderbilt in the SEC championship? That's what it feels like every time I throw on the Big Ten championship. It feels like it's not even worth watching because you're not getting an evaluation of two elite teams. So I don't know what to tell you. I've heard the running game is not that strong for Michigan. Alabama can be run on, but Michigan ain't going to do it. Do they have the athletes that Georgia has? Well, on the outside, certainly not. So, no, I don't think it's going to be even a competitive ball game unless this quarterback takes over. And I would think Alabama's secondary won't allow that to happen. I think that's the only shot Michigan has.
I think Bobby's right. I mean, first of all, Iowa won 10 games, so it would be like playing Ole Miss. Because if Ole Miss was one-dimensional, but Bobby says Big Ten West. It's because the framework of the division was so imbalanced that's what happens in the Big Ten championship game. But I think Michigan can run. I mean, Blake Corum is one of the best running backs in Michigan history. They can run the football. I don't know if you can run on this particular Alabama team. And I don't know if they've got the athletes in space to take advantage of the secondary because Alabama's players are never out of position. They may not make the play, but they're never out of position. So I took Bama plus the 2.5, so I don't have a whole lot of case here for Michigan other than strange shit happens sometimes when teams have been going to the game and losing for years in a row. And that is what 18 and 22-year-olds deal with. And sometimes you see a team go through a year where they get there and they lose. They go through another year and they get there and they lose. And all of a sudden they show up and they finish it off because they don't lose mentally when they get off the bus. So. They need
Alabama to be looking ahead to Texas, I feel like, for any shot for them to win.
Maybe. I will say I was watching it wasn't on Monday night. Who was it?
Raw? Monday Night Raw?
It was the Bengals drafted DJ Turner in the second round, who's a Michigan corner who ran a 4.2. So to say that they don't have speed or athleticism or talent is just wrong. It may not be good enough to beat Alabama. But
yeah, listen to Ken. Bama beats Michigan easily. They can't stop Jalen Milroe.
Nobody can stop Jalen Milroe right now.
The real question is who wins in Houston?
I'm not ready for that one yet. Because the reason that Texas was able to beat Alabama, in my opinion, the two reasons that make them dangerous and could win the whole thing, their defensive tackles and their quarterback's accuracy down the field. That's how they beat Alabama. And Jalen Milroe was not Jalen Milroe in that game yet. He had not become the Superman that he is today.
I should go on the 50-yard line with the Decaying Dynasty shirt just to motivate them.
You think so?
Yeah.
You think they need a little extra after beating Georgia?
They do. Team? They've been saying it all year. Proving the doubters wrong or something like that.
Was it JC Latham? I was standing like 3 feet from JC Latham at SEC Media Days, and he was like, he rattled off like, I want the Outland, I want the SEC Championship, I want the Joe Moore Award, I want I was like, damn, you've been studying the awards.
Yeah.
But look, it's worked for them. Here they are playing in the playoffs.
Auburn fans claiming Bo Nix invite to the Heisman.
Are they really?
I doubt it.
That's pretty pathetic. There's no way they're that pathetic. I mean, I know they're pathetic, but they're not that pathetic.
Man, how good would Auburn been with Bo Nix this year?
I mean, actually, he would have fit, and he frees the system extremely well. So,
I know.
Yes, they would have been far better.
Would have beat Bama, probably.
They would have been far better at completing forward passes. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Which they were incapable of doing for much of the
most of the
even
season.
against New Mexico States.
Speaking of forward pass, hey, we said, hey, do something crazy, Sam Pittman. They hired Bobby Petrino like 12 minutes after the show was over last week. So good job, Arkansas. Good job there. Quarterbacks in the portal. We'll get to that in just a minute. But Jaden Daniels, Bo Nix, Michael Penix, and Marvin Harrison are your 4 finalists for the Heisman Trophy. If you had a ballot, Mike Bratton, what would your 3 names be? You can be any names in the country. And I'll try to give you a hint as to what I did.
Oh yeah, they'd never be foolish enough to give me a vote, which
why not?
That's smart on them. Jaden Daniels got to be your winner. I think hands down. I don't even think that's questionable at this point in time. Who is next? I thought it was kind of funny. I don't watch these other guys, so I'm not qualified to vote for such an award. But I did think it was funny because when I watched Washington, they were singing the praises of Michael Penix. Not that he's a bad player, but I thought the difference in them winning was a backup running back from Mississippi State named Dylan Johnson. I mean, he looked like the difference maker. And even after the game, they asked Dylan Johnson, star of the game, should your quarterback win the Heisman? He's like, hell yeah, did you watch it? I'm like, no, I did watch, and you were better than him. So, no, it shouldn't be Penix. That's foolish.
Penix is not going to win it.
I watched Bo Nix. He looked really good. I'm trying to think when that was on Thanksgiving.
Every single game.
Oregon State. I mean, that's the only one I watched. He looked good. So, yeah, I'm fine with him being there. I think Jalen Milroe
Bo Nix's passing numbers are better than Jaden Daniels.
Oh, okay.
And it's hard. It's very hard to do that.
That's fantastic. Put him in there. I got no problem with it. Give me Jalen Milroe. I think needs to be there as well. Is that enough? I mean, do we need any more? Brock Bowers, I'm just curious if he didn't get hurt.
I'm curious what I absolutely would have had Bowers on my ballot if he didn't get hurt, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm. How about Cody Schrader? I would have put Cody Schrader in there.
By the way, congrats to Cody Schrader on the Burlsworth Award this year. Totally deserving. What a fantastic story. He's sort of he sort of embodies everything that is great about college football. To go to the lower levels and then work his way back as a walk-on to his favorite school and then lead the SEC in rushing, being All-American. Absolutely the embodiment of what makes the sport great. And so tip of the cap to Cody Schrader for sure. Congrats to Mizzou fans as they will play Ohio State, of course, in a bowl game. Who knows how interested either of those two teams are. I assume Missouri is very motivated in that game to kind of finish off a historic season and kind of make it the great. If they were to beat Ohio State, and I don't think bowl games results mean anything, I think playing in the game is fun and getting to play your freshman is really important. And most importantly, the practice time is critical. I guarantee you Billy Napier, Shane Beamer, and Sam Pittman all agree with me on that. The practice time is critical. But this could be Missouri's greatest season of all time if they were to beat Ohio State in that bowl game. So
yeah.
Absolutely. Cody Schrader deserves a ton of love. I think it's, without giving away who I put on my ballot, I did not have one name was on my ballot. I did not have Michael Penix on my ballot, and I did not have Marvin Harrison on my ballot. There's one other name that's not there that I had on my ballot, So we can just leave it at that.
Joe Milton. Got it.
Yep. Well, it's Nico, actually. It was Devin Leary.
Next year's winner.
I thought Devin Leary was the best quarterback in America this year. That's what I thought. No, Brock Vandagriff will be your starting quarterback at Kentucky next year. So I did vote for Eli Drinkwitz for the Eddie Robinson Coach of the Year award. I did put him up there.
Nice.
I had him at number 2 behind Kalen DeBoer, who coaches at Washington. So I think he'll win Coach of the Year in the SEC and probably be Coach of the Year candidate top 3 nationally. Otherwise, do you want to get into the portal here? You want to talk some portal?
Jump into the portal. Let's do it.
So number 1, I want to ask you: do you enjoy the fact that like every single off-season and postseason information comes in the same period of time? Like it is. We talked about this last season on our show, Stephen Lassen and myself, the Cover 2 podcast. That December is totally broken. You can't have the conference championships, the Heisman Trophy, the portal opening, recruiting signing day, and the bowl season and the playoff system all happen at one time. The NFL knows how to do this. They spread it out. Do you like the chaos of all the information that really truly matters to our sport happening at the same time? Do you think it should be spread out?
Yeah, of course it should. And it's going to be even worse next year because right during portal and I think it'll be both the portal and the early signing period. There'll be a college football playoff going on at the same time. Imagine Nick Saban having to prepare for a game tomorrow, and it's signing day today. You know what I mean? Like it's illogical. Again, I don't feel bad for the coaches because they make so much money. I don't think that's the debate here, but just why jam-packing it all in at the same time. But I think that's part of this all being tied to academics, and it is at the end of the day. It's supposed to be university, and we got to get guys in here before spring semester starts. So I get that aspect, but I don't really see much of a resolution to any of this. Do you?
I think there's a couple small things you could do. Bo says, here we go. Where does Braden want Walter Nolan to go? Bet you he doesn't say A&M. I couldn't care less where he goes.
That's not what you said off air.
Couldn't care less.
Braden is donating to the NIL.
You know what I want?
Walter Nolan to go to Bama.
To Vanderbilt. No, what I want is for Walter Nolan to do whatever's best for Walter Nolan and for everyone else around him that doesn't know him to shut the fuck up. How about that? Like when a player says, hey, I don't want to play in a bowl game, you don't have a right to tell him what he should or shouldn't do. Here's what you could. What about an early signing period, like right before camp opens, to get recruiting at least off the books in December? What if you had your signing period in February, like traditionally, and then you had a signing period for those that are clearly committed and know what they want to do, and they don't want to deal with official visits. They don't want to deal with coaches texting them at 4 a.m. They don't want to deal with Jim Harbaugh in a tree outside their house. Like if they want to just, if they want to get it over with, what if you move the recruiting period from December and put it on, August 2nd or something? You know what I mean? Like first weekend in August, first Wednesday in August. That could at least move one off of the December books, right? Thank you, Tony.
Yeah, but what happens then when you get like coach firings and, maybe Billy Napier is recruiting a hell of a lot better in August than he is come December. I mean, people got to have the right to change their mind, don't they?
But then don't sign then, right? If you're not on board. I'm just saying for the ones who want it. And then you can sign in February. Like I don't understand the December. Like I got why they tried to do it because it's the code. But like why not? Like you can sign in February if you want to see how Billy Napier coaches. You can sign in February somewhere else if you want.
Well, because they have so many now that do the early enrolling.
Okay.
So they're going to do signing day in February, but early enrolling starts in January. Like it doesn't make sense.
We used to do that. You would just enroll in classes and then you'd sign your scholarship. Because actually, what it did is it functioned as signing period. Like before we had the early signing period, there were plenty of early enrollees. It's when you actually show up to the first class that you actually then sign your scholarship papers and you're in. So like, that's one solution. I think the other solution is having an official portal date of like the first 3 weeks of May. Like the first 2 weeks of May after spring semester's over, you've got an official portal like time where we as college football fans and media and players and coaches get like a chunk of time to like really have fun with this stuff and really study it. Players can build a relationship with coaches if they want to, have a clearer picture of what the roster is going to look like. I don't know. That's another solution as well. And if your coach gets fired or changes,
well,
then you have your chance to leave.
I think that's a poor solution as well, because let's use like Brock Vandagriff as an example. If he does go to Kentucky, if he is slated to be their next starter, you'd want him in before May because you want him there for spring.
I don't disagree with you, but
like that's instrumental to him winning the job in the fall camp.
Okay, so what's your solution then, since you hate everything I've said so far on the show today?
Well, we just can't delay everything, because then I don't know how that helps, you know?
Well, the idea is to break it up, to spread it out.
Mm-hmm.
And to help everybody. It helps the coaches and the players. It helps the fans. It helps everybody involved to have a clearer picture. Like, this is, again, I don't love the NFL as college football is better, but what the NFL has figured out is to bullet point big chunks of time in the offseason as like appointment viewing content schedule. It's like, oh, we all can't wait for the combine. Then we all can't wait for free agency on March 1st. Then we can't wait for the draft. And then we can't wait for July minicamp. And they do it. They spread it out so that there's new content that matters to the rosters and to the outcome of the season spread out so that fans can have fun with it and they can make as much money as possible on it, which is what I would like to see from the college game. I just don't know how they do it.
Well, I just don't think we can put fans before the actual people that play and coach the game. You know, I think it is what it is because of the academic calendar.
So no solutions.
I don't think there is one. And it's going to get more convoluted next year.
Why can't we just say why can't we just say the transfer portal is every year thing, not every half a year thing? Why can't we do that?
You mean just, at all times they can transfer?
Yeah, like there's all summer long you can transfer.
Right.
But once the school year starts, you're there. Unless like some of the traditional stuff happens, like your mother is sick and you want to go take care of her, right? Like the more traditional reasons that the NCAA would say, yeah, go for it, that you need to go be with your family or whatever. I don't know. I think that I'm not saying it's the best answer. I'm not saying I would vote for it. I'm just trying to I'm just, brainstorming here. So
I think the portal should be open at all times except during the regular season. I think once the regular, or even fall camps, maybe fall camp till the end of the season, no portal. The rest of the time, completely open.
Bobby says, I like the old days when you just paid players under the table. I'm okay with, I'm fine with paying players above the table. It's fine. It makes it all even. It makes it all, or not even, but it makes it all like, clear. Bo, thank you for subscribing to 440 Sports. Yes, those are mostly all my shows. We talk SEC football. We do previews of college football games. We also talk a lot of other Southern sports as well, mostly the Titans. So go check those out. A lot of Nashville-centric stuff in there. But we talk Texas A&M for sure, Bo. So come on over. So there's a bunch of quarterbacks in the portal. Tanner Bailey and Cawthon Gaither. I don't know if I'm saying that right for South Carolina. Max Brown's already in the portal for Florida. Brock Vandagriff looks like he's going to Kentucky. From Georgia, Kentucky's lost two guys, Deuce Hagen and Dustin Wade. Max Johnson, of course, went from A&M to North Carolina. Will Rogers, it looks like, is going to go to Washington after leaving Mississippi State, which is a really good fit for him with that offensive staff. Ryan Grubb, the coordinator, and Kalen DeBoer. That's a really good landing spot for Will Rogers. So if you're rooting for Will Rogers, which I hope people are, then like basically the most productive quarterback in SEC history. And then Vanderbilt lost like 11 quarterbacks. All 11 quarterbacks on the Vanderbilt roster are gone. Taylor,
I think they got one
Seals,
back.
and Swan.
They got one back, I think, but he hasn't played yet. But he is scholarship.
All right, good. That's good to hear. Will Shepard is a really, really good player, wide receiver that went into the portal for Vanderbilt. He's the guy to keep an eye on. You mentioned Juice Wells, Walter Nolan. If you look at sort of the rankings, again, just based on the star rankings and stuff, you've got a bunch of names in here. The names I would keep an eye on, like Will Howard, a quarterback at Kansas State's in here. I think Cam Ward at Washington State. Dante Moore is a 5-star freshman from last year at UCLA. He's into the portal. There's a lot of good quality names in here if you're a team looking for a quarterback next year. So Dylan Gabriel's in here. Kyle McCord has entered the portal. Holy smokes. I don't think I even knew that. So,
but interestingly, no KJ Jefferson.
What do you think that tells us? Anything?
They're probably working on an NIL deal as we speak. I think that's what every player that is not in the portal, but has it been reported or suggested or sourced that is going to the portal, that's cue it up to, I'm thinking about leaving. Opportunity to keep me. There's a window here. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And which I got no problem with. Hell,
no, it's how business is done.
If someone came to me today and said, "I'll pay you X amount to do what you're doing," hell, then that's what you're worth. So, I think that's what it says. And maybe he's intrigued by the Bobby Petrino hire. I think that
wouldn't you be if you're him?
Oh, certainly. I mean, if they had no coordinator right now, I think I would assume that he'd be in the portal. I really would.
Yeah,
and still be communicating with Sam Pittman, being like, who's the coordinator going to be? But I think that adds to it. And they're probably at the same time, Arkansas is probably looking at it like, can we get Dante Moore? Can we get Will Rogers or whoever? I'm just speculating, but can we get?
There's good names. There's really good quarterbacks in the portal.
And is that better than KJ? You know what I mean? Like these are all the things the conversations that I have to imagine are taking place behind the scenes.
Ken says, give the players the same flexibility that the coaches have. Philosophically, I completely agree with that. It's long overdue. And he says KJ is staying. I do think, and I don't, for those that have a problem, I don't think anybody probably watching this or listening to this has a problem with kids getting their fair share or young athletes getting their fair share and negotiating for that fair share. Like, hey, I might go to the portal, but let's see who you hire. Oh, you hired Bobby Petrino. Okay, I like that. Now, what can you do for me and my family? Okay, fine. I'll stick it out and let's ride. You know what I mean? And I think that's the way we're doing business these days. And this new subdivision that the NCAA is proposing is going to pay them an X amount, about $120,000 over 4 years, through like an academic educational trust. But then they're still allowed to go out and make as much as they want on top of that. There is going to be revenue sharing at some point. When the playoff contract is worth $6 billion, they're going to have to slice off a piece for the athletes at some point. That's what the NCAA is trying to avoid here, and the SEC, frankly. Although if I'm Greg Sankey, I want to put in place the revenue sharing now, so that it makes the SEC look better, recruits more talent, as if they need the help, and it kind of pushes the sport forward.
I think the one that interests me the most, though, is Dillon Gabriel and what's going on there, because I would certainly think. And again, this is just me completely speculating, but I have to believe he went to Oklahoma because he got NIL and to team up with Jeff Lebby, which is smart. I mean, it both paid off. And then now they've got a star freshman quarterback, and they're probably sitting here. He probably wants NIL money, which he was already getting, and he had a wonderful year, so he deserved all of it. But they're probably sitting there saying, well, hell, we got to pay you and this other quarterback. We can only play one of you. So, I mean, I think a decision was made there. And again, that's me speculating.
Well, Oklahoma doesn't. None of the schools pay any of this money, so it's not Oklahoma's budget. You know what I mean?
Well, there has to be an NIL budget in the real world.
But it's not Oklahoma. It comes from all their boosters and businesses and stuff.
Whoever it is, I mean, there's only so much to go around, and so now what interests me the most is. You're sitting here, you're like Mississippi State. You're down in the dumps. We were awful. Now we got a new coach. Can we get a quarterback that knows his system, that we know can star in this league instantly? If I'm a Mississippi State fan, and again, I have no idea if he's going there, but if he does, it gives me hope for next season that at least we're going to be fun and exciting, and we're going to have an offense that can outscore people. And that's why I think is the beauty of this system.
No, I actually completely agree. And I think Jeff Lebby was instrumental in setting up the NIL deals at Oklahoma. He was a huge part of the NIL organization there and sort of driving it to the players. I imagine he's going to be a huge part of that at Mississippi State. Dillon Gabriel's a pretty darn good player. Is he an elite player? I don't think so, but he's pretty damn good, and he's better than anything they got right now. Tony says, what's Missouri's advantage in NIL? And it's largely that the state has no rules at all. The state, Eli Drink, I've never heard a coach do this. This is one of my favorite moments in SEC Media Days history. And I don't think you and I were sitting there together that day, but like I was sitting there and Eli Drinkowitz steps to the podium on, I think it was day one. And he says, I'd like to thank, and he like rattled off the governor and like the state legislative body. in the state of Missouri for like passing all these rules that basically allow everything in to be allowed. Basically, they have the most hands-off rules of any NIL state in the country, and Eli Drinkwitz is capitalizing on it for sure. I agree that here's let me ask you one thing though about the fun of this all, because I agree with you that the fun of this all is the transferring, and what it does is it spreads out the wealth. It allows teams to get better faster. It allowed Tennessee to get better faster, right, by going to get Hendon Hooker. It allowed South Carolina to get better faster with Spencer Rattler. You know, like teams can kind of stay relevant. I mean, Jackson Dart was a transfer. Jaden Daniels transferred in for Brian Kelly and was pretty good. But if you look at Georgia does it with Carson Beck, home raised. Jalen Milroe, home raised. J.J. McCarthy at Michigan, home raised. Quinn Ewers is really actually a recruit for Texas. If you don't know the story, Texas had not yet passed the NIL law. He graduated a semester early from high school in Dallas. He went to Ohio State, took a check from Ohio State, and immediately transferred back to Texas. It was all part of his plan. So really, he's a homegrown player, in my opinion, for Texas. Because if they had the NIL rule, he would have just gone to Texas. Other than Michael Penix at Washington, Ohio State, homegrown with Kyle McCord, although that's changing. Missouri, Brady Cook, homegrown. I'm curious if you think that does it work for everyone else in college football, but not for the best teams, or what? Like Jacob Coker is a transfer, and Joe Burrow's a transfer. I don't think we've had any other transfers win the national championship in the last 20 years. I don't think. And I could be wrong about that.
Stetson Bennett was a transfer.
He signed with Georgia out of high school.
Boom, busted. Cam Newton.
Homegrown recruit. Cam Newton, that's a good one. That's a good one. Stealing laptops, that's a good one.
Yeah. Should have been Hendon Hooker.
Cam Newton. Fuck off. Cam Newton, Jacob Coker, so that's 2010, 2015, and then Burrow in 2019. Okay. Anybody else? Am I missing? You got Greg McElroy, Tim Tebow, Jameis Winston in there. You got AJ McCarron winning 2 of them.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to do this off the top of my head here. You got Trevor Lawrence winning 1, Deshaun Watson winning 1. Those are both homegrown. You got Jalen Hurts is homegrown. Tua was homegrown. If they won it together, I think that's what we count, right? They won it together in 2017. 18 was Lawrence, 19 was Burrow, 20 was Mac Jones, homegrown. And then I know what people say about Stetson, but that was a guy who signed with Georgia out of high school. He went to Georgia out of high school. That's a homegrown player.
I don't know. I don't think it really matters. I think.
Sorry, Caleb says, "What do you mean by homegrown?" I mean a recruit, not a transfer. Mm-hmm. Like Jordan Travis transferred a long time ago, but he transferred to Florida State. Michael Penix played at Indiana, transferred to Washington. Bo Nix played at Auburn, transferred to Oregon. That's all I mean.
Your theory is going to be shattered next year when Shedeur Sanders leads Colorado to the first ever 12-team playoff. No, but I mean that's a fine theory.
I'm just curious.
We kind of talked about this before. I think it's because all the teams not all, but 90% of the champions you just mentioned, right, coming from like the top programs. So it's a little bit easier. I feel like it's easier for Georgia and Alabama and Ohio State to recruit these guys, to keep them happy, to surround them with talent and get there. There's not a lot of Joe Burrows out there, where they come in and they completely change the program. And that was already a program that had won multiple national championships before.
Right. Elite recruits. Like, I mean, all the Oklahoma guys are all transfers, but they couldn't win a championship because their defensive line wasn't good enough. Like Kyler Murray transfer, Jalen Hurts transfer, like Baker Mayfield transfer. Like all those guys can win Heismans, but not national championships. So, no, I mean, that is what it is. Ultimately, it's the biggest names, but I think there's also something to being someplace for more than a year. Like, I don't think there's many guys that step into a new team and then in the first year, like even Joe Burrow took him 2 years. It wasn't his first year. It was his second year. So I think it takes time to kind of build a national championship pedigree. Just curious, but I do think it's better for the rest of the sport, like Kentucky or Ole Miss to get Jackson Dart and Kentucky to get Brock Vandagriff, and sometimes it works. You get Will Levis, and sometimes it doesn't. You get Devin Leary. So Tennessee knows this. Sometimes it works and you get Joe Milton, or you get Hendon Hooker. Sometimes it doesn't. You get Joe Milton. So I don't know. I think it's interesting. Yeah,
it
Fields.
Is
Justin Fields is a good one. Justin Fields going to Ohio State. I forgot about that one. But that's because all the Georgia fans were so racist, though, right? I thought that's what that was.
That's not my comment.
Georgia got screwed. Georgia got screwed out of the playoff. Georgia got screwed.
Yeah, why are you always focused on these quarterbacks, man?
It's almost as if they're the most important player on the field. The one that touches the ball every time.
The running back?
I don't know what game you've been watching.
I'm trying to think of the reverse of Mike Leach. Paul Johnson?
Yes, that's exactly right. Or Ken Niumatalolo.
What's that guy up to?
I don't know what he's doing these days.
He should be OC at Vanderbilt.
That's not a terrible. I've been saying Vanderbilt should run the triple option for a long time. Most people in Nashville agree with that, by the way. There's no question about that. 728 days in between Georgia losses, 29 games.
Wow.
Man. And Georgia scored, I think, on 3 of their last 5 possessions against Alabama in the SEC championship game, the national championship game.
And we're just throwing them in the trash, huh?
In the national championship game, Georgia almost won.
Came up just short, man. Nick
just
Saban.
Just short.
He's a damn wizard or something.
Yeah. Well, all right. So appreciate you guys hanging out and all the wonderful and amazing compliments in the comment section. I feel more love today than I felt at any point during the season, Bratton.
These are some spicy fans here. You know what?
Yeah, well, that's great. That's what makes the game great. If you took time out of your day to log on to this channel and watch this show to call me an idiot, I am honored.
Let me ask you this, since we got a minute or two left here.
Shoot.
Billy Napier, Shane Beamer, Sam Pittman, least likely to return in 2025.
I have to look at their schedules.
They're not out yet.
Well, we know most of the opponents. I would say Pittman's on the hottest seat. The pressure to win is greater for Napier. And I think Shane Beamer has banked more equity than everybody else. But South Carolina fans are nuts. So in a good way. In a good way. I think it's Pittman 1, Napier 2, Beamer 3. In terms of like hot seat pressure to win. That's what I would say. But I could see the argument for Napier as well. So
could you see any scenario to where Brian Kelly's on the hot seat if next year sucks?
I mean, if it's bad, I mean, you're talking like what, 5 losses?
Yeah, something like that.
7-5 for LSU. That'd be, I don't know. You have a division championship and probably a Heisman Trophy in your first 2 years. You probably get at least 1 year pass. Hot seat maybe the following year, but not like actual movement.
Because with Texas and Oklahoma coming in, there's annually going to be at least one devastated fan base that we're 7-5, right? Doesn't there almost have to be?
There almost is already anyway. Here's what I would say. Here's what I will say, and I'm curious to get your response to this. Because so many of these teams won't get to play each other every year, right? Like there's going to be, let's say the top 6 teams are Alabama, Georgia, Texas, Oklahoma, LSU, Tennessee, whatever. Like those, whatever, just pick a 6. A&M, Auburn, and Florida all count too. Mm-hmm. But like, let's say those 6 teams, what are the odds that all 6 teams are playing each other? There's going to be a lot of times where those 6 are going to miss each other from not entirely, but we've got to be very prepared for, like looking at the top of the SEC standings, seeing like 8-0, 8-0, 7-1, 7-1, and like those teams maybe not have played each other. And so
I think that's why they're expanding the playoff.
Well, yeah, but maybe there's also, to your point though, like there won't be as many fans as devastated, I don't think, if your guy's good enough, because you might miss some of the other good teams, and you're not in a division where you're like you have to play the quote unquote best team. Does that make any sense at all?
No. Okay. But I got you, maybe. But
if you're not gonna just like Alabama and Georgia don't play in the regular season every year now. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. Is Texas and Oklahoma in trouble? I know everybody's, again, Texas may win the national championship.
Texas is fine. Texas is going to be fine.
That's a crazy statement, but
Texas is fine.
I mean, they seem to struggle down the stretch in the Big 12.
Texas did?
Yeah.
They won like 110-15 in the final 2 games, including the conference championship game.
No, not that game.
Oh, just forget those last 2 that you're talking about?
Iowa State won by 10. TCU won by 3. Kansas State won by 3. That's Houston.
Very good.
7.
Houston was there. Houston was there. South Florida.
All right. Now, in the
Houston
SEC,
was there. South Florida.
That's at Auburn. That's Bama coming to you. That's at Georgia. That's Tennessee coming to, you know what I mean? It's like, it's a much different story in Iowa State, TCU, Kansas State, BYU, all these jokes of a team.
Well, they didn't. They beat the trash out of most of those teams. They struggled with Houston. They struggled with TCU. Beating Iowa State by 10 on the road is actually kind of like beating like Tennessee or Florida on the road by 10 this year. I think the Auburn game for Alabama is no different than the Texas TCU game. Those are basically identical. Two great rivals struggling. But in the games that matter, I mean, they beat Texas Tech, which is a bowl team, a pretty decent team. They beat them like 57-7 in the final game of the regular season. And then they beat Oklahoma State in their conference championship game with one of the most effective offensive performances in the history of the conference. So no, I am not worried about Texas right now coming into the SEC. I am interested into what Oklahoma is going to be because Texas has the defensive line to compete. They've already proven it. They went into Alabama and did it. The reason I like them to maybe win the whole thing is their defensive line. Oklahoma has yet to recruit and establish a defensive line since 2009. It's been over a decade, and it's why they lost all those playoff games. So Brent Venables, supposed to be a defensive wizard, has to figure out that defensive front. If he can do that and replace his offensive coordinator, I'm way more worried about Oklahoma than I am Texas. There's
a lot of guys that are wizards till they get to the SEC. Then they're just idiots that can't coach.
I agree. That being said, Steve
Chad
Sarkisian,
Morris was an offensive mastermind at Clemson.
All right, well, I don't, the difference being
Get his ass out of here.
The difference being Steve Sarkisian has coached well in the SEC, just for the record. So
as a head coach?
No.
I didn't think so.
Calling plays. He was an offensive wizard at Alabama in the SEC.
In a COVID year, we don't count that.
He made Lane Kiffin retire because he was going to be the head coach in waiting at Alabama for Nick Saban. They were going to name him head coach in waiting. You knew that, right?
When was this?
When he was the offensive coordinator. It's part of the reason Lane Kiffin left.
That's not what I heard.
Well, there's other reasons why Lane Kiffin left.
Very, very different reasons.
Yes, there's 2 main ones.
Oh,
Joey Freshwater and Steve Sarkisian.
Okay, yeah, okay. We're then
we're on the same page. Please don't mention Chad Morris as Bobby G. Texas Tech is not one of the worst teams. They're just not. But 57-7 is still impressive either way. So they're not as bad as Vanderbilt. Let's not go crazy. So, all right. Who you got in the other one? Texas, Washington. I know you're picking Texas.
Texas, easy. The one game I watched Washington, though, they were pretty good. Guess what? Not their defense. Their defense looked awful. But
they have the worst defense of anybody in the playoff conversation. Yes.
But they looked very well coached and efficient on offense. I'll give them that. I watched one game.
It's why Nick Saban tried to hire his offensive coordinator. And Jimbo Fisher, I think, tried to do it as well.
Right.
Ryan Grubb, offensive coordinator at Washington, both tried to be hired. I think Notre Dame tried to hire him also.
I think A&M was interested in hiring the head coach there for a minute.
Oh, you mean after Jimbo, post Jimbo?
Correct.
Yes.
But he said,
"Yes,
I'm trying to win a championship here."
He's also a West Coast guy. That's where he's coached most of his. He's that part of the country, and now he's a Midwesterner. Although he did coach it, he coached in Indiana before going to Fresno State, so he kind of fits in. He's a Midwesterner now, a head coach at Washington, aka a Big Ten Midwest school, Washington. So
exactly.
Yes, I did see Michigan's reaction to Bama getting in over Florida State, and yes, Only a stupid ass would rather play Alabama than Florida State. And it's why Florida State got screwed. Or it's why Florida State doesn't belong in the playoff. I'm sorry. It sucks. It is what it is. It's a great year for a 12-team playoff. All right, what you got, Mike? Anything else?
I got nothing. I got nothing.
All right. Please, everybody, subscribe. That SEC podcast, of course, you already are. 440 Sports is over where I'm at. We've got SEC content over there, lots of Southern football stuff, so come on over and hang out. We do appreciate you guys. SEC Mike on Twitter, you can get to him there. You can get to me at Braden Gall on that fucking cesspool. So come hang out. We do appreciate it. Otherwise, have a great week. Every single Tuesday, 1 o'clock Eastern time, live on the 440 Sports YouTube page. Come on over, and we'll talk to you then. Otherwise, have a great